go into the stocks first and talk about Caterpillar first, because this one is a global leader in capital equipment. So now we're talking about a stock listed in the United States of America. It's a Dow Jones Industrial Average constituent. It's not that enormous. We'll see in a minute what its market cap is, but remember it's headquartered in a small town called Peoria in Illinois. That's close to Chicago. I'm not sure why that's necessarily worth a mention. But its core business is in manufacturing big yellow equipment. So there we talk specifically about earth-moving equipment, which could be used in the construction equipment industry, like backhaul, back diggers, but also the enormous articulated dump trucks that you see in these open-cast mining pictures, where the person standing next to the tire looks like a little dwarf, and the vehicle is just so enormous you cannot believe how it could be manufactured. In addition to that, they're also a world leader in diesel engine manufacture. So that's diesel engines, for example, that get used in power generation, as well as diesel engines that get used in ships and all sorts of other applications. Diesel electric locomotives, trains that operate either on electric lines overhead or diesel straight up. And then they also own a business called Bucyrus, which they bought some years ago, which is involved with longwall coal mining. That's a piece of equipment that you actually assemble underground, and then it moves along the coal seam, chowing it away and sending it to the surface. So I think you're getting the picture. World leader, top branded company. They have plenty of competition from other Asian and Korean companies and all sorts of operators around the world. It still, though, is one of the industrial giants and one of the bellwether stocks of a global nature in that space. It's got a market capitalization of $50 billion. $50 billion, so that's about, I don't know, doing my math, 700 billion rand or so. It's got a dividend yield of 3.5 and a price earnings ratio of 14.2. And we're talking about this one first just to set the scene with regard to this sector and the stock, because, you know, as they are doing, I suppose that sort of sets the trend for the global industry. Yeah?
Absolutely. I think this is, as you mentioned, a brand leader worldwide. It's probably, if you want to own an excavator, you'd probably prefer to have a Caterpillar than anything else. The way they come into play in South Africa is something we'll touch on a little bit later. But you said, you know, they are the main manufacturing of these sort of products worldwide. Interesting, as I said earlier, to see how these companies try and look at new ventures, new ways of optimizing the business space that they operate in, and how to actually extract more sort of profit from the area that they do business in, is the fact that they are now moving into what they call big data analysis with a smaller company that they actually bought a small stake in, and it's the same sort of thing that we're seeing from their largest competitors. What they are trying to do is they are trying to use all this information that they get when they service these engines. They look at how the machinery have been used to optimize the whole fleet for businesses that want to go into a project. So yeah, it's an interesting way of extracting more profit from any sort of
which they then charge for.
Yeah,
so they have a service relationship.
So they're just starting off with this. So I think it's an interesting venture, but that just shows us that these companies aren't you know, just printing money. They aren't just selling loads of machinery. We know worldwide we're not actually seeing a lot of capital investment. We're seeing people, you know, trying to de-gear their books still worldwide. So interesting.
Let's have a look and see how that reflects in the share price, though, because this is an interesting one. If you go back further, like 25 years, you could have bought Caterpillar at $20 or thereabouts. Then it begins a pretty heroic run-up with the mining-related surge in China up to 2008, where it hits a high of about $100 a share. Then it sags like you can't believe in the 2008 crisis, down to like 20 again. But in the last 5 years, it's traded in a bit of a band. It gets back at a pretty good level, at a pretty sharp clip. In 2011, 2012, makes all-time highs at around $110 a share. Then it's sort of drifting around. And then in this most recent sell-off, with the sort of sense that capex, particularly in mining, with the iron ore guys running out of steam, the price is falling, oil services industry also coming a bit unglued, the share price has tracked back to about 80 or thereabouts dollars a share. So I guess you can tell from the picture that the current mood with regard to capital spending is ambivalent. It's not like nothing is going on, but there's a lot of concern that maybe they've overcooked it a bit in the big ticket mining expansion. and that's going to take a while to recover. But then again, in places like Spain, it's recovered from its big sell-off,
Yes.
and there's a little bit of public spending on public works coming back. So it's a bit of a mixed picture.
Very, very true. And I think, the whole story that I discussed around the big data analysis, Komatsu was actually the first to start doing that. So Caterpillar's already following in some sort of way compared to the competitors, but there's a lot of market share that they could potentially lose.
Yep.
It just depends how on top of the game they're going to stay.
But they are on top of their game.
They
I mean,
are.
Doug Oberholman, the CEO of this company, is a very sharp operator. They're very good. They have very strong relationships with their franchise distributors. They make very good stuff. They're very good at production optimization. They've taken advantage of cheaper steel prices in certain markets to move manufacturing around. So, I mean, the share price, I think, has done better than I would have expected it
Yes,
to.
I agree.
But anyway, there's a price for everything, so now we've got to bring it to a head. The sense I'm getting from you, but I've got the same sense, is that this is a very tricky environment to know
Yes.
exactly what lies around the corner. So probably leaning towards not hot.
I think the sector as a whole, as we say, is not hot. So even though it's a hot company, let's go for not hot
Yeah,
today.
good. Okay, so we're not hot on Caterpillar.